Hello and welcome to another episode of the Indiana Hoosiers Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Brown, joined and flanked again by Todd Golden and Jack Ankony. And guys, this is it's a little tough. We're gonna get into some hard discussions maybe here with this Indiana basketball team, and I guess we'll just start and we'll just get right into it. They've lost 2 games in a row now on the road by more than 25 points. The record still looks decent. That's 13-5, 4-3 in the Big Ten. It's not horrible, but those kinds of losses are certainly not encouraging, and the road doesn't get any easier. So Todd, we'll start with you today. How bad is it? I mean, it feels rough coming off of some losses like that, but how bad is it really?
Oh, it's been pretty bad. 2 25-point losses in a row. The one on the road at Iowa last Saturday was bad enough. You can generally kind of forgive to a point road losses, but then to come home on Tuesday against Illinois, and Illinois is a good team. It's not that they lost, but the manner in which they lost, it just looked like nobody knew what they were doing. There was almost nothing positive to grab from that game at all. It's a team in disarray, and there's quite a few rough games ahead. So, it felt like it could be rock bottom. Whether it is rock bottom or not, we'll see. But it was probably the worst loss I've seen inside Assembly Hall since I've this is my third season and my current stint covering Indiana. So it was without question the worst loss that they've suffered since I've been covering the team.
Yeah, that's rough. And I misspoke myself. Yeah, one was at home. That is, I mean, that's that. Okay, I'll just ask you, Jack. Is that unacceptable? A 25-point loss at home at Assembly Hall, is that unacceptable for an Indiana basketball team ever? Like ever?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there were a bunch of records about it. I think that was the first time they'd lost like by 25 points in 2 games in a row in like 15 or 17 years, something like that, since the 2000s, and one of their worst losses at home in program history. I think really what beyond just the bad basketball that was played, you could really sense the frustration from the fan base. The student section chanting about firing Woodson, and the team gets booed going into the locker room. So I think that sort of just spoke to kind of where this team is at, and everything that the frustration is starting to boil over when you watch. Kind of like Todd said, you can excuse a road loss to a certain degree, but to do that at home was really, really unacceptable.
And Todd, Jack just brought that up. What are your thoughts on the fire Mike Woodson chants? Goodness, man, hearing that at home after getting boat raced off the court, that's obviously not a good vibe, not a good feeling. Is there legitimacy to the demands from the fans? I mean, what are the thoughts on hearing chants like that? I mean, every school and every sport has probably heard that at one time or another. I don't know, maybe not all of them, but that's never a good thing.
Yeah, it was brief. I mean, it came from the student section. It was in the first half when things were really turning sour, but it's been coming. I mean, there's been discontent all year at certain games, and it's been building over the last couple weeks. There's been booing when Woodson was introduced. He effectively gets introduced twice because they do a thing on the scoreboard and then they announce him like they do at every other game. But it's been coming, and it wasn't like it was chanted through the whole game, but it was loud and it was definitely noticeable. And Woodson was asked about it after the game, and he kind of acknowledged that the fans are going to be dissatisfied when there's losing, but we'll see. I mean, it was kind of like everybody was sort of excited to have the students back from break, and didn't actually turn out the way anybody wanted it to turn out. But we'll see. I mean, the more they lose, the more you're going to hear that. So that's just part of the deal when you're underperforming.
So you guys are obviously locked in much closer to the program than I am. Traveling to these games, hearing stuff like this in person. Are there hot seat discussions? Is there going to be if things like this continue? I mean, what's the outlook for Mike Woodson at this point, Jack? When you have a couple bad losses, and fans are overreactive. They're going to overreact to some bad losses, and a bad one at home certainly. But what's kind of the vibe and the mood around Mike Woodson and his job so far?
Well, I think if you ask most fans, I I think they're you just look on social media and it's pretty obvious a lot of fans are pretty done with him, but it's not necessarily fans that
Mm-hmm.
decide his status. But kind of the way I saw it going into the season was it felt like he had accumulated enough talent to have a good year and contend for the Big Ten and comfortably make the tournament and win a couple games, if not make a run there. But he's fallen well short of those expectations that he sets, to win a Big Ten title and compete for national titles. So, if you look at kind of just the expectations he sets for himself, he's fallen short, and it looks like another season of that is trending in that direction. So, I think it's a possibility, and it just kind of testing the mood of the fan base. It seems like a lot of people would agree with that too.
And I'll stick with you, Jack, because you put a story up about this. There were some comments made by a couple players after the game. Luke Goody and Anthony Leal had some things to say about, and that's a tough spot. You put some kids up there after they get blown out on their home court. There's not much they can say. People aren't happy. They're not happy. They're upset. The coaches are upset. Like, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. But what are your thoughts on how the team has responded? These specific guys, these guys specifically, and what you kind of touched on in your article.
Yeah, I mean, I think they said a lot of the right things. They took accountability for some of the issues, and Goody and Leal are two kids that grew up in Indiana. Goody played for Illinois his first 3 years, but the two of them know the fan base, and Goody pretty much said, we have to wear the jersey with more pride. And I thought the one thing that I've kind of been going back and forth about, he said, to all the fans that were booing and so negative, don't switch sides when we get this thing turned around. And, I understand the sentiment from a player's perspective. Like, if you guys are going to hate on us now, don't be fair weather fans. I understand that. But I think in some way it also kind of adds to the frustration from the fan base, because you're sort of alienating some fans, where it's like, if you hear a player, don't root for us when we turn it around. I think there was sort of a similar thing last year when Woodson made some comments on senior day about, the true fans sticking by us. I think that stuck with a lot of people that kind of rubbed them the wrong way. So from one respect, I thought they said a lot of the right things, and you can tell that they understand the situation they're in. But I also think at the same time, it's kind of riling people up even more to a certain extent.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of lose-lose. I mean, like, fans are, if they say like we're good, then fans would be like, oh, you didn't see anything wrong. Like,
Right.
there's nothing they can say when you get beat by 25 and things are starting to skid a little bit. Fire Mike Woodson chance again. Like, there's not a lot that they can say up there. I think you put it well though. Like, they did the best they could. They said some decent things, but yeah, you can see how that might rub the fan base the wrong way a little bit. Todd, we'll jump back over to you. What's a I don't even know how to word it, because we're going to get into the road ahead, and some other tough road games are coming up. But like, what's the, I don't know if you want to do a 1 through 10 or a percentage. Like, what should the panic level be right now for these fans, for the players? I mean, Mike Woodson's sitting around trying to figure out what to do for his next game plan. Like, what's the panic level? We'll do a 1 to 10 on Indiana's current season right now. What's the panic level out there for kind of the whole thing in a bubble?
Well, I think fans are panicking because, this isn't a very Indiana fans want to win, and they expect to win coming into this season. I do think we need to start to challenge the notion of how talented this team is. I mean, I think some of the pieces have not performed anywhere near to the level that people thought, and that's not an excuse. I mean, that's this roster was built by Mike Woodson, so if they're not performing, or if they weren't as good as advertised, that's that's not a free pass for the coaching staff. I mean, but I do think some of these players don't fit together. And so in that sense, the panic from the fans, is appropriate right now. I mean, that game was horrible on Tuesday. There's absolutely no excuse for the way they played. As far as the team is concerned, one of the things that I've been long concerned about, and I wrote about earlier this week about Woodson's regime, is there just never seems to be any lack of urgency about what is actually ailing this program. And even on Tuesday night, the post game comments, Mike Woodson tends to be guarded, and that's fine. That's how he is. But I didn't sense any kind of sense of, that this is something we need to get fixed right now. I mean, there was some decent comments on what is ailing the team, and I think Woodson's default is to kind of let's calm everything down, everybody chill out. But I'm not so sure that's the right demeanor to have right now. Now, you don't want to go in there freaking out either, but I don't sense that. I feel like the sense of urgency from inside the program needs to be way higher. And, you just can't. Woodson did hint possibly at starting lineup changes. We still don't know yet as we record this whether Omar Ballo is going to play after he got into a scrap late in the game. So I feel like the fans are probably at the appropriate level. They don't have any control over any of this, but the team needs to be at a little higher level in terms of, there's still, if you look at this optimistically, there's still plenty of season left. I mean, it's not like it's over. So there needs to be the sense from inside the team that, okay, we got, without being arrogant and being complacent about it, we've got this amount of games left. This is what we can do. Let's do it. And that's what I don't always see from, at least the public face of what they project from the Hoosiers. So that's what I feel like needs to be done.
Jack, I want to get your opinion on that because I think that's an interesting point that Todd made. You hear a lot that teams take on the personality of their coach. Like you hear that across the board in most sports. And if Mike Woodson is usually a pretty even keel guy, keeps things close to the vest, doesn't, not the type of coach to go in and blow up on his team or go too crazy or, like Todd said, take the urgency up a lot. Can that magically change now? I mean, like I saw you nodding along. It looked like you were agreeing with what Todd was saying. Like, is there something that Mike Woodson can do that's suddenly going to make him a different kind of motivator or leader that can get different results out of this team?
Well, at this point, I mean, I don't know if he's just going to change his personality mid season and everything and do like that. I'm not suggesting that, he should just become a whole different person either, but I think Todd has made a lot of good points that he sort of he sort of treats it as, it's a long season. And you're right, Indiana's not, they're 4-3 in the Big Ten. They're not 1-6, if you look at it from that perspective, you can convince yourself that it's not that bad. But if you watch the actual basketball being played, it has looked that bad. But I guess to answer your question, it's kind of hard to tell, Woodson's approach because a lot of the times in press conference settings, he just says, we got to keep working. And I think that kind of runs dry with a lot of fans and things like that. But I think that's been a concern for the last few years. Just like, does Woodson have that urgency, or does he have kind of the right motivation skills to get this team ready to play? Because there are a lot of games, and Illinois really wasn't one of them, but there are a lot of games that they come out pretty flat, or have these extended stretches where they kind of look like they're just sort of going through the motions. So I'm not necessarily expecting him to change the way he approaches things, but I think it's a fair point to make, just kind of about the lack of urgency.
Yeah. Well, I like this next question. It's always fun to play the magically improved game, right? I think credit to Jack. I think Jack for this question. We'll start with you though, Todd. If you could magically improve one area or one aspect of this team that would generate different results, what would it be?
It would be a consistent effort from more of the players. I mean, that's part of the problem with this team is you might get a great performance one day and then you get a terrible one the next. And I know that's not a magical fix. That's more of a, get consistent thing. But that'd be one thing. I mean, I don't know who you could depend on game to game. For example, Trey Galloway might be very good one game and then he's very poor the next game. Omar Ballo has been relatively consistent in terms of his production, but he's not always consistent in terms of his effort and his defense. Mackenzie Mbako lately has been awful. I mean, really. I mean, he's, I think he's shot. I don't think he's shot above 33% in the last 3 games. So that's part of the problem. And there's others. It's kind of whack-a-mole. You just don't know what you're going to get every night from everybody, and it's hard to sustain roles. It's hard to sustain any kind of rhythm. I mean, the team did win 5 in a row before this stretch, so they were doing something at that point. Now, some of it was the schedule, but that would be the one thing that this team so sorely needs, and I just don't know that you could conjure that out of nothing. That's why it kind of seems like that would be a magical solution, but it's a team that probably needs a lot of, if there was the NBA and you could go get somebody on a 10-day contract, you go get a shooter, but that's not how it works. So consistency is what's needed, and from consistency you could build into other things.
Nobody walking around Bloomington, that can knock down some shots. You don't think a little mid-season walk-on or something like that?
Can they play any defense? I mean, that's another problem too. I mean,
Jack, it's your question. I mean, I loved it as soon as we started talking about what we were going to hit today. I was like, oh, I like that one. So is there a magical wand, a potion or something that you could figure out that would help this team?
Yeah, I mean, I guess sort of I've had this kind of thought for a lot of the season. You watch a lot of these games. I think the Iowa one, some of the ones in the Bahamas, like I think the team is really disconnected on defense, and just and that's, it could be a product of coaching. It could be a product of a lot of these guys haven't played together. So sort of my thought with this was, if you could give them an off season to learn each other and get more comfortable on the defensive end, I think that would make a world of difference, because you see a lot of teams with guys that have played multiple years together, and it looks kind of like they move as one unit, versus you watch this Indiana team sometimes and they give up these wide open lanes to the basket, or just defensive breakdowns where guys are after the play pointing to each other. Oh, I thought you were going to be there. Oh, I thought you were going to be there. So that was kind of my idea with that question. That's kind of why I put the magically improved phrase there, because I don't think that's something that can be fixed at this point of the season, January 16th. It's something that's only built over time. So, yeah.
It's probably not great when you guys both kind of laugh and say, like, it really would be magic if something could change or happen at this point. But you guys both did that, so probably not the best sign. But yeah, I mean, Todd's kind of talking about like an entire philosophical, just a completely different approach. I mean, like, if you're not getting effort, like that's real hard to switch on, like you just said, January 16th, and then your answer, same type of thing. Like, those are sweeping changes, and I don't know. I don't know if you're going to find anything like that at this point.
Here's part of the symptom of the problem. This roster was built largely through a pretty good NIL war chest that Indiana has. They're basically, and I'm not, I don't want to impugn every player with this, but this is a team that was largely brought together via money. And, playing for the jersey and all that, was anybody here for the quote unquote the jersey in the first place? That's hard to build chemistry that way. And, but having said all of that, this team did have an entire off season to get together. I mean, this isn't the old days where you rolled it out in October and, that was the first practice and you didn't do anything other than open gyms up until that point. They have workouts all season. For them to be so unprepared, to appear to be so unprepared is inexcusable. I mean, that should not happen, regardless of how the roster was built.
Yeah, no, I mean, those changes certainly affect the way things are done, and Mike Woodson's been doing it one way a long time, and maybe not. You've seen a lot of legendary basketball coaches hang it up because they're just like, I don't want to do it this way with the roster, the roster assembly, the NIL stuff, the transfer stuff, and maybe this is what it looks like if you don't hang it up. Woodson might not be cut out for this new era of college basketball. We'll see. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but who knows? Like you said, it's tough when you put the roster together like that. We'll finish with this, guys. Indiana is on the road tomorrow at Ohio State. Then they come home. Then they have two more. I'm sorry, no, the next two are away. Then they come home. Then another. So the next 3 of the next 4 again on the road. I'll just put it bluntly, and we'll go to Jack and we'll finish with you, Todd. Could it get even uglier? Like, what are the expectations for these next four? Again, three of them are on the road. What are people thinking right now after you come off of two 25-point losses when three of the next four are away from home?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could. You kind of at this point you kind of question if the team is going to stay together. Are they going to let these losses motivate them and use it as a kind of a wake up call to be like, hey, we got to kick it into gear, or are they going to kind of turn on each other? I think that's kind of a question at this point of the season. But yeah, for the next five on the road, I don't think Ohio State is. They've had struggles of their own. That's not a game that Indiana is incapable of winning, and neither is the one at Northwestern. So, I think you got to pick up at least one of these next two on the road before you return home. And all of a sudden, if you can win two out of the next three, you're feeling a little bit better about yourself. But I kind of think that what we're going back to is a lot of the problems that keep popping up have kind of been the case all season, and there just hasn't been a whole lot of reason to believe that it's going to change.
And is that a fair, honest, even attainable expectation? What Jack just laid out there, Todd. Three of the next four, maybe, or if you get really kind of going, maybe they get four out of the next five, or is that just like, is that a pipe dream at this point?
Right now, they need to start effectively at zero, and by that I mean to start playing better for one thing. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost at Ohio State tomorrow. Ohio State is 10-7. I think they're 2-4 in the Big Ten at this point. But Ohio State has risen up and beaten some decent teams too. So you never know what you're going to get out of them. But I just want to see them play better. I mean, at this point, that was so bad on Tuesday that wins and losses at this point are important, but they're almost immaterial to seeing some progress in terms of what they're actually putting out on the court. So the schedule sets up, they go to Ohio State, which is they wouldn't be picked to win, but they certainly can win. They go to Northwestern, a tough team to play on the road because of the style that they play. They play very well at home. So that's another one, much like Ohio State. They get Maryland at home after that, I believe, and Maryland's a different team away from College Park. So, and then after that, Purdue and Wisconsin away, which those are going to be tough. So these two games coming up are important in terms of their win-loss record. But at this point, and I know fans probably won't accept this, but, if they lose by, say, 5 at Ohio State, they played hard and there was some progress on the defensive end and on the offensive end, at least you can say it wasn't the meltdown that it was on Tuesday against Illinois. So that's what I want to see. If they get a win out of it as part of that, then wonderful. But this team needs to demonstrate that they can put a competent product on the floor. That's how bad it was on Tuesday. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, that was one of the worst performances I've seen from any team. So you almost have to start from there. Now, whether that's going to be their attitude, whether they've had enough time to do that, I tend to think probably not. But that's where it starts. So if they can get wins from that, in addition to calm people down, it's probably better that they're not playing in Bloomington 4 out of the next 5. Because fans are, they could probably, a road game might be a good thing for them right now because they, I'm sure they were probably shell shocked to some degree about what they experienced on Tuesday. So, but it's on them. I mean, they have to fix it. There's the excuses of pressure and all of that, that's part of playing Division I basketball at Indiana. And so the coaches, the players need to accept that. I don't know that they need to embrace it, but they need to accept it and understand that they're the only ones who can fix this, and they need to knuckle down and fix it.
Well said. What a concept. Better off playing on the road just to get away from the unfriendly confines of Assembly Hall. That's wild to say about an Indiana basketball team, but maybe that will help and can center them a little bit. They know they're not going to be welcome on the road. It's another thing to feel unwelcome in your own house. So that's a little bit
Ohio State, though, is a good place to play. That place is not exactly like a pit. So and their fans are focused on football right now. So
absolutely,
afterthought for them.
True.
So
absolutely.
That might be if you're going to go there, that might be a good time to go.
Well, he is Todd and he is Jack. I guess I should say they are Todd and Jack. I'm Brandon. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to another edition of the Indiana Hoosiers Roundtable podcast. We'll be back next week to discuss what will it be by this time next week. 2 more games. Looks like 2 more games, 2 more road games, and we'll check in again and see how Indiana did on the road away from Assembly Hall and get you guys updated on everything Hoosiers basketball. So thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.